Greetings all, Shane Bruce, Restomod Daisy, and today we're going to be talking about refinishing factory original stocks. I know I don't do that very often, but I have done it in the past. Here are some examples here on the back row. This is a number 11140 model Red Ryder that had pretty rough looking stocks. As you can see, they've been beat to pieces actually, but the imprint wasn't bad. So we went ahead and refinished that. Said, I guess we could have one original laying around. This is a later version, 1938, with a different imprint on it. You'll note there's no Fred Harmon's signature on it. And we didn't refinish it in the factory colors. We did it in yellow. But you can still see where the effects of age and time, right here on top of the wrist especially, that kind of grungy look is present. But with the wood dye we use in the oil finish, you can actually see the nature of the wood itself. It isn't covered up completely in an obliterative stain. Now, moving down to the gun we're going to be working on today. This is another customer gun from a previous customer who was pretty happy with the last result, so he wanted this one juiced up. It's running fine, about 365 feet per second. But I told him, I said, the stocks, they really look bad, and as you can see, that's not an under or an over-exaggeration. This gun was built in '93, so that's the varnish finish that Daisy used at the time. And you can see where it's gotten cracked and where it's wrinkled right in through here, and where it's just gave up the ghost and left the wood there. All the use points where heavy wear occurs are pretty bad, and there's some dings and dents that are going to have to be addressed. But basically what we want to do is we want to take this finish and we're going to redo this stock in a dark mission brown. So we're going to refinish this in a dark mission brown, so it'll have the same basic brown affect the original stock had. I wanted to point this out too. On these some Red Ryders that are embossed on the right hand side, like this gun is, you'll notice a phenomena where they cut the front hooves of the horse off. Didn't quite center up quite right. Don't know if they changed the stock dimensions, or maybe the roll stamp was new and improved. Who knows what the actual story is. When we get around to working on this side, what we're going to do is remove the surface varnish. Later on, we will work on the imprint varnish with a toothbrush and some acetone, but that won't be covered in today's video. To give you an example of the change you can effect, this is the side that's going to be done, and the other side looked pretty much like it, but now the other side looks like this. We actually can determine grain pattern in the wood, and it's scraped to about, I'd say, 150, 175 level finish, just like she is. Same thing's happening here on the forend, the before. This is after, but it's not really after yet because we haven't stained it. Now, to scrape a stock, what do you need? Well, you need a scraper. This little handy device I picked up years ago to help me with inletting the receiver channels in the Daisy stocks that I was working on at the time. It's a furniture scraper, and they come in a variety of sizes. It's basically a thin metal piece. It has a slight edge on one side or the other, and allows you to take a very, 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 very thin slice off of any piece of wood you might be working on. In olden times, before the invention of sandpaper, scrapers were the way that people got their stocks finished and smoothed up. Now, this is a secondary scraper. You might recognize it as a single-edged razor. It does an even finer job, and we'll use it to touch up some areas that may not benefit as much as they should from this scraper. Now, to scrape, well, what kind of tools do you need? Well, you need a scraper, and like I said, scrapers can be fabricated from about anything. But I find in my work that I like to make a tool to hold things, so I don't have to hold things with one hand and work with the other. So we're going to move over to the vise, and I'm going to install this in the little tool that I built. Basically, this is a piece of limb that I picked up someplace, God knows where, slabbed a little bit off of it, bolted a 1x4 to it. Now what that gives you is a nice flat platform. And then you just clamp your work to the platform and it won't roll around too bad on you. It will move, but that's not a bad thing because we'll be able to shift its position while we're working on it. You might want to come around on this side so that you're out of the light. All right, so there we are. When we take a look at the surface finish, we see that it's not so hot. So let's start working, say, down here where the varnish has already given it up. Locate your edge that cuts, and you just, as the word says, scrape. Now, is it a quick process? No. But is it a process where you can achieve really good results with minimal input from tool costs? Yes. I do believe it beats sanding or chemically stripping, because we're doing two things at the same time here. We're pulling the varnish off, and we're also smoothing up the surface a touch. Now, you can pull till you scrape, or you can push away scrape. You'll probably end up doing a variety of those things in the course of a project, especially one like this. This has got a lot of different contours on it. Now, we want to be careful around the logo because we don't want to chew it up, but we will, at some point in time in the project, get after it with one of the smaller scrapers that are on this particular piece, because what we want to do is eliminate all the varnish. We have to get that off so that our die can access the wood fiber and give us the color that we're looking for. And then, of course, the oil finish after that, after the die is dried, will determine the overall look and feel of the piece. Now, the cool thing about scrapers is you can work into angles with them, curves. They're not bothered by curves because there's not a whole lot of contact between the tool element itself and the surface being worked on. So, if you're of the type of mind where you really don't object to a lengthy hand task to get a specific objective achieved, you might think about scraping. You could do the same work with a orbital sander or sandpaper, but the amount of dust you'll generate in the process may or may not be worth the overall effort. I don't think you get the level of control you get with sandpaper with that you get with a scraper, because you can actually see the work as you're doing it. You get a very thin line of contact, so it's easy to get the nasty stuff out, condition that wood surface a little bit, and reduce the amount of actual sanding you'll do to it later to true up any inconsistencies. So that is basically scraping. It's not mythical. It's something that was done every day back in the day when files were not employed or direct chisel action. But this was a method that was used by the old timers to smooth up stocks, if they were inclined to do that. Not all of them were. Quite a few boys in Pennsylvania provided long rifles that were gorgeous weapons, but god awful looking from a surface view point of view. I think that's more of a modern attribute. As you can see, it's just cutting that varnish right off of there. And if you're getting too much hop and chop in one direction, just spin your scraper around and head the other way. So basically, we'll end up doing this whole stock in this fashion in the other side of the forearm, and then we will stain it up with some dark mission brown and give that a couple of days to cure out so it's good and dry before we put the oil on it. But it's an inexpensive, pretty effective way to refinish wood without a huge investment in time, tooling, or supplies. So that's stock scraping. That's all we've got for you today, kids. This is Shane Bruce with Restomod Daisy signing off.